You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on our YouTube channel, all over social media, or our morning newsletter, KCSN Daily, dedicated to your Kansas City Chiefs. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
KC Laboratory, sponsored by Emprise Bank.
It's a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank. You can't tell I'm a little excited right now. An Emprise Bank debit card is good anywhere. Why worry about the nearest building when you can pick a trusted company that cares about the KC Metro? Debit card options to choose from, a mobile app, and all kinds of features. Emprise Bank goes wherever you go and can be your trusted partner wherever you live. They are a trusted partner of the KCSN Draft Guide. They are just an absolutely wonderful company to work with. It's been great. Emprise Bank, member FDIC. I've been independently studying these two fine friends of mine for the last 5 years, and I'm excited to be talking to them today. Find them on Twitter at Maddie_KCSN. Maddie, you don't have to put it in my contract to independently study your wonderful work.
I got so many different directions I think we could go here. I don't know how I feel about this, first of all. Second of all, you've definitely been independently missing this podcast a lot. That's number two. And number three, these people don't know this because they're not here pre-show, but we got another look behind the curtain at Kent's disdain for defense. Yet again. And this man somehow thinks he's going to keep up to me with me in a game of 21, and he doesn't even know how to spell defense. Like, what is this?
This is exactly how the podcast needed to start. Before we get into
he got like 6 things in, like right off the top. He had like bars ready.
Straight up, Maddie. Gotta fit it all in. Before we get started here, if you are watching this right now, hit the subscribe button. This has been a massive content day for KCSN. Jeff Allen and Mike DeVito are back. We've got KCSN update. We've got new podcasts. We got more new podcasts coming. KCSN update will be every single day of the week going forward here. And get subscribed to the Substack, KCSN Daily. You can do that, kcsn.substack.com. You will get at least one free newsletter every single day from Charles Goldman. He had his first one today. And if you sign up, you can do it for free, but if you want to pay $30 a month, you can join the Discord. You can get the 3 of our works, our film breakdowns, everything like that. I think that's all the KCSN housekeeping. I'm ready to talk training camp now. Hey, guys, football has basically started now.
We did it.
I woke up today and I could just tell. I could just feel it. The summer clock turned off. Vacation time's over. Oh, fact, Wyoder. Fact.
Yeah, Wyoder 05 for the audio listeners, because Maddie forgot this is also a podcast. Kent's going to need way more than 4 hours a week of film on Maddie to compete at 21. Okay. This slander is just, it's unbelievable.
Accurate. You're right.
I'm not going there. I just love that Maddie was able to get that. He had like 6 things, and it is because I haven't been on the show, I guess.
I had so many.
He was ready. My man was ready. We want to talk about all things training camp to this point, right? There's not a ton, but there's still, there's still top, things that are worth discussing, especially some of the news today. Let's just start with Justin Ross. Why not? Let's just lead off the top with Justin Ross, because we've led off with Orlando Brown for a lot of shows. We'll get to Orlando Brown and that whole thing eventually as well today. But let's start with the Justin Ross situation. Placed on the IR. I think, if you looked at, the picture that the wonderful Zach Eisen found on Instagram, Justin Ross in a walking boot from about 2 weeks ago, kind of seemed like this is probably the direction that was heading. He's kind of had his injury issues. And it's a shame because, as Craig has so astutely pointed out several times, the gas that the Chiefs put on Justin Ross early in the preseason, the one-handed catch, they were excited about him. They don't gas up guys they're not excited about. But now we're sitting here, the start of training camp, and Justin Ross's season is over. He's been placed on the IR with a foot issue, fixing a previous foot issue that he'd had. Not the neck this time, just the foot. Maybe actually, Maddie, maybe that speaks to the poor 40 testing, the poor athletic testing that he went through. Still laboring, still going through some of that too, Maddie.
It absolutely could. That could play a role. I think if that was the case, though, they probably would have shut him down a little bit earlier, would be my guess. But maybe he just wanted to go out there, show what he could do. They wanted to see a little bit of what he was going to be capable of before, making that decision. I'm not sure, but this was something that I guess you could have expected a little bit when you started to look. The Chiefs wide receiver room isn't great. It's not top of the NFL list, but it's deep. Like, there's a lot of guys competing for spots. It was going to be hard to find a spot for Justin Ross amongst this group, just given how these guys are going to be able to play special teams and do so many different things. So this one made sense. There was a little bit of hype coming back because we hadn't heard about him for a while. Maybe he was going to regain that at camp here. And then lo and behold, right at that time, this comes out. No harm, no foul here. I think this was something that was probably expected when the Chiefs signed him. I do want to say, though, Justin Ross, because of the injuries, everybody still kind of has that sophomore season in their mind. He's not as young as you would like for a guy that's having to redshirt now, though. Like, I believe he's already 22. He'll be 23 next year. Like, he was a full-on senior coming out. Now you're going to get a redshirt year in the NFL. By all means, he's not old, but that's not exactly what you want for a guy that's already been, 4 years post-high school.
I mean, Kent hates him now. You brought that up. Kent now hates Justin Ross. Forever.
Wait till it hears he's transitioning to defense and playing quarterback.
Oh man, does he get to play corner? I want to break down some Justin Ross corner. No, it makes sense. It really does. It was going to be one of those where he was probably going to be a bottom of the roster guy. They were going to try and keep him in the room, try and help him learn the offense. But realistically, there were no major expectations this year. Now all of a sudden, you cut to next year when he's going to be back, because he still will be in the room throughout this entire process. He can still be a part of that sort of thing. Now he can sit there and wait and see what's going to happen with Juju Smith-Schuster on a one-year deal. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a guy who could get out after this year for the Chiefs if they don't like what they're seeing. Mecole Hardman, who's out of contract after this year. All of a sudden, the wide receiver room for the Chiefs gets a lot lighter. So I can understand how the Chiefs may look at this situation kind of like they have with other guys in the past and say, hey, just chill for a little while, get yourself healthy. We know that you're going to learn the offense. You sit in that room, learn how to do things. Let's fire it up next season. It says that, he'll be ready for OTAs next offseason. Come into OTAs, look to win a starting job at that point, because the talent is there and everybody knows the talent is there if he can stay healthy. So give him that full year off to recuperate from the foot, make sure the neck is good, and then move forward with the understanding that now you should be healthy and you should be competing for a starting job.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's not a blessing for him. That's not the right phrasing for him, but it could wind up being okay for him, and it could be okay for the Chiefs situation moving forward if they can get anything out of Justin Ross moving forward. I don't really think I had a ton of belief that he was going to, make a sizable, impact. There's just so much stuff that he's got to navigate to get through. There's so many guys he's got to compete with. I think he was kind of competing with Josh Gordon potentially for like a fifth wide receiver spot. The last maybe non-special team spot potentially, depending on how many wide receivers that this team is keeping. I mean, but now I think, Josh Gordon's got a situation where he's got an opportunity. But I think one of the, maybe the Chiefs can go a little bit of a different route too. Like, I think the winner for this, Josh Gordon, I think is definitely a winner for this. Like, I think there's an outside chance that he makes it depending on the roster crunches and the number of crunches at each position. I think it just depends on if the fifth receiver spot is a special teams guy, or if the sixth receiver spot is a special teams guy. If the fifth receiver spot, or the sixth receiver spot is a special teams guy, the one I'm kind of keeping an eye on now is there's some early sizzle about Cornell Powell. I look at him from a special team standpoint specifically, though. Like, if he shows enough growth as a receiver, if he's really, the talk was, early on these last couple of days of training camp, Cornell Powell's caught everything, been very consistent, made some really strong catches. highly productive. If he can continue on that trajectory, we've seen him be a core special teams player for the majority of his college and pro career. Like he was a core special teams player for Clemson, and then just continued to cut his teeth until he finally earned that opportunity to play receiver, and played well towards the stretch of his last year there. This might open an opportunity for Cornell Powell. Like I think that's the guy I'm kind of looking at who could potentially be the benefactor for this situation. Because I mean, special teams is very valuable. Number 5 or number 6 is what I'm really curious about now. Like I'm curious if the Chiefs keep a receiver specifically for special teams, if they're more strategic now. Because I don't think Justin Ross could be a receiver there anyway. And what this means for Josh Gordon, because I think he's one of the other guys. Like I think that opens things up a little bit more for Josh Gordon, because honestly, I don't think the Chiefs were going to keep both.
Well, I mean, if we are going down the route of looking at special teams, you also got to think Justin Watson and Doris Fountain are fully back in the mix. And, we've heard Watson has been very impressive from some people, or there's good hype for him coming out of, some of the camps that they've done so far that are making it all the way up to national media. Doris Fountain was able to get active last year a few times because of his ability to play special teams, had a really good camp and preseason with the Chiefs last year. So even without Ross, I don't know if Cornell Powell is my first winner coming up on who I think of. I agree with Josh Gordon because they're kind of the same player. They're in the same spot for the Chiefs roster. They were going to be competing with one another, in my opinion, for one of the depth, receiver only, non-special teams contributor spots. Now it seems pretty clear that it's going to be Josh Gordon, unless Powell or Fountain or Watson can out wide receiver him. Nothing to do with special teams now. I think it's purely up to who's going to be the best wide receiver after your top 4 of MVS, Hardman, Juju, and Sky Moore. You're now looking at, can anybody be better than Josh Gordon? And then maybe they want that size. Maybe they don't. I don't know what they're looking for, but I just think he's the clear winner here. And now you just still have the same competition for that final special teams wide receiver combo player, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I can see that. It seems it's obviously still very early. We are through one whole weekend.
The veterans aren't there yet.
The veterans aren't even there yet, but we're through one whole weekend of camp. Cornell Powell seems to be the guy right now that's a little bit on, let's call it the Doris Fountain, sort of train from last year, where we started seeing the build happen pretty early, and it just sustained throughout the entire, preseason. And he looked good in all of those roles. He looked good in preseason games. He got a lot of reps. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of reps from Cornell Powell. We didn't necessarily see him last year in the preseason. They were still trying to integrate him a little bit, and obviously didn't work out very well. But I am very curious to see if he hits, again, that sort of Doris Fountain role from last year, where comes up, plays really well across the board, and just slowly kind of earns a job by being the guy that does a little bit of everything, puts in the work on special teams, and earns that spot. Because as we've talked about a lot this offseason, there's not a ton of guys on offense that we can kind of write in as good special teamers right now. And that's not always the case. Sometimes it is, but that's not always the case. So you want to be able to round out your wide receiver room, especially Dave Tobe, and yes, even Andy Reid want to round out that wide receiver room with guys that can be 4 core special teamers as well.
I am most bullish. I'm bullish on Cornell Powell, the special teamer, and that's the thing I keep coming back to when it comes to the Watsons. I understand the Watsons. I don't really believe in Doris Fountain, the special teams player, either. The only counterpoint to that is, I mean, Dave Tobe gave Doris Fountain that opportunity before Cornell Powell, and so last year. But I'm still bullish on Cornell Powell, the special teams player. That's where a lot of my, I don't think he was even in the consideration for me until the Justin Ross news. I think maybe that makes the flexibility of the roster a little bit different. Now I'm wondering if maybe there's a path for him to eventually make this roster. Should we go to the Orlando Brown news? Is it time to go to the Orlando Brown news? I think we need to. It has been reported that Orlando Brown is not there in St. Joseph tonight. He will not be in St. Joseph for a while. Orlando Brown Jr.'s absence from the Chiefs will continue on into for who knows, training camp. Some people are saying week 1. I'm not buying that. But yeah, I mean, he's expected to miss some time after the Chiefs were unable to come to an agreement with him. Matthew, let's start with you. Thoughts on Orlando Brown missing time here with the missing time here in training camp?
I don't think we should start with me because I've been talking to you guys all day. You guys are on the extreme end of the stance here. So I think it should be you two going back and forth for a little bit. I'm kind of in the middle on this one. Like I'm a little bit more in the middle. You two guys are on polar opposite sides of this issue right now. So like I just want to sit back and just kind of watch you two go at it and then just interject when I can.
Maddie is rarely Switzerland in our arguments. I'm usually the Switzerland in the discussions here. So he just is relishing the fact that I'm on one side of this.
I'm just trying to debate how far I want to take it right now, too. I'm frustrated. I'll go. I'm frustrated with the entirety of this situation. And I'm frustrated because I feel like I've seen this coming. This illogical, nonsensical holdout coming, if I'll be honest. Because I think his entire process has been absolutely bizarre. And if you go back and look at, missing time, not making a decision on hiring an agent because of, and the reasons cited were Mahomes' wedding. He wasn't in Mahomes' wedding. He just was attending. Like, I just like that as an excuse for waiting to sign an agent, waiting until 5 weeks out to sign that agent, signing an agent that has no prior relationship and really no NFL experience whatsoever to manage, the livelihood of your family, generational wealth. You're trying to come to terms, and you're hiring a guy way outside the box. Rejecting the Chiefs deal, whatever. I'm fine with that. Getting to this point,
you though?
Getting to this point where not only we talked about this a couple weeks. Maybe some of this threatening to hold out training camp was a little bit of a negotiation tactic. Threatening week one was a negotiation tactic. I'm not entirely sure anymore because now we're sitting here. A deal hasn't been reached, and now he's sitting out and he's going to be missing time. If you are, the whole thing has just been bizarre to me. The timing on everything, the decision process has been, I think, just kind of bizarre from Jump Street. I'm not some of the Jeffrey Chadia comments about, or not his comments, some of the reporting about how, the Chiefs don't think they got this. They're negotiating with the same guy that they had. I don't know. There's something bizarre about the entirety of the situation. So I can kind of understand the Chiefs situation a little bit here, if I'm being candid, because it does seem like it's moving target may not necessarily be the right word, but it just seems like the process is so all over the place. That would be really difficult to negotiate with. I could understand if some of the public stuff that we're seeing is manifesting itself at the negotiating table. I completely understand, because if I were in Orlando Brown's shoes, I probably would have done everything entirely different. Like literally every single thing. I would have sped up I would have, tried to come to a conclusion on my agent quicker to give him more time to negotiate with the team. Craig. I mean,
Keep going, buddy.
I would have showed up for training camp. The best place for you, Orlando Brown Jr., to get paid and to be the best place for you to be right now is St. Joseph, Missouri, with your teammates, working with the organization, getting better, not skipping practice, not going off independently and doing your own thing when your team has spent the entire offseason installing new things, working through new things. There is something to be said about earning and getting those reps with your team, with your teammates, on an offensive line where continuity matters. And now we're going to sit there and Jaron Christian is going to have to sit there and play left tackle, or we're going to have to screw that continuity and chemistry up for 3 weeks because Joe Tooney's sitting there at left tackle and Nick Allegretti's kicking inside the left guard. The best place for Orlando Brown Jr. to be right now is in St. Joseph, Missouri with his teammates, because Andy Reid didn't seem particularly, if you read between the lines left, Andy Reid offered up. I'm sorry, I'm going. This is a filibuster.
Let loose.
I got a lot of thoughts. Andy Reid, when he got up there, how reserved and like how limited he is in what he gives the media, right? Andy Reid did not have to offer up Joe Thuney being able to play left tackle or jumping into left tackle, quote unquote, in a heartbeat. That is not something that Andy Reid will offer up typically. But he kind of just, that seemed very intentional, very focused, very targeted. I don't think Andy's thrilled. Of course, Andy's not thrilled. And I think a little bit of that showed up with that comment. And so I don't think the Chiefs are going to be as excited about coming to the negotiation table next year with the way that he's handling today. And 2 weeks from now, if he's still not here, that's not going to go over well at the negotiation table. I mean, the Chiefs feel like if you read the tea leaves between the Chadia, comments, doesn't seem like the Chiefs felt like it was an entirely good faith negotiation. Like, just reading between the tea leaves, I'm not putting words in their mouth. That's just my observation. The comments that they made. I don't think missing training camp's good faith either. There's nothing wrong with missing training camp.
Okay, kid, you're cycling now. You miss a couple podcasts and you decide that you got to get it all out in one rant. Is that what this is?
Does that count as a rant?
Yes. Yeah, that's an extreme rant. Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't at first. You were being very calculated at first, but as you get to like minute 8, then like it turned into a full-on rant.
I feel like I've had more.
No. You had your take.
Real quick. No, before
bizarre.
I don't think Orlando Brown is a bad teammate. I don't think he's a bad guy.
Don't you walk it back?
No, there's nothing about this. I don't think he's a bad player. I just think it's bizarre. I think he's handled it completely bizarre, and I'll leave it at that.
Bizarre.
Can I leave now? Am I done?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, we got this, buddy.
Cool. See you guys.
So to go through a lot of this, I genuinely left. To go through a lot of this. Does anybody know how much money Orlando Brown Jr. would make between now and week 1 of the season if he signed his franchise tender and he was there immediately?
Yes, I do.
$0, right? Yeah, he's got no workout incentives. He's got nothing to lose by not signing the franchise tag other than potentially getting hurt off the premises, which would then jeopardize that franchise tag. That is a very real thing. Yes, he could get integrated into this offensive line, into this offense. I would like to see him in camp. I will start with that. I too would like to see him in camp. I completely understand how a player that has literally no money to gain by being there doesn't want to show up for part of training camp. Now, the argument there is he's not practicing, he's not getting better, so he's not going to be better to get the payday that he wants next offseason. Well, that may be the case. We will see in week 1. We have seen time and time again, there are countless players that get franchise tagged, hold out, and it goes one of two ways. Guys either perform excellently on a contract year, or they stink it up, and now all of a sudden they don't make the contract that they want to in the next offseason. That is Orlando Brown Jr.'s prerogative. Now, as far as the Chiefs are concerned, yes, this may harm things. Andy Reid hates it when players miss camp. He hated it when Eric Berry missed camp. He hated it when Justin Houston missed camp. He hated it when Chris Jones held out of activities. Like, he hated all of those things. They paid all 3 of those guys. They still came to terms with all 3 of those guys. Now, this could be a situation where they don't like the way it's being handled and they could walk away next offseason. But the other team that may come into play here for Orlando Brown Jr. services may not care about whether or not he held out of training camp. If he shows up and he plays well from weeks 1 through when the Chiefs are done next year, ending in a Super Bowl victory, then maybe all of a sudden a team like, let's call it the Jacksonville Jaguars, decide that they are willing to meet his asking price. That's all it takes as far as Orlando Brown Jr. is considered. If he is looking for a big payday, he doesn't necessarily need the Chiefs to be the one to come to the table. Now, again, he should be there. We should see him there. I expect him in St. Joe. I know that Mike Garafolo has walked back some of the original comments, some of the original reports, and said, we'll see on the week 1 thing. And he won't be in St. Joe soon, but insinuated that he would still be there. if Orlando Brown Jr. walks in after preseason week 1, lines up with the offense, is anybody really thinking that he's going to, that week or 2 of practice that he lost is the difference between him being the player that we all remember last year and an all-pro? Because no, I don't think that's the case. I think what he does on the field from weeks 1 through the end of the season are what matter here, not him showing up for a couple of weeks in training camp in July.
Maddie, real quick before you get in.
You have at it.
I lost my voice a little bit. No, this is just for Jason Thomas playing a drinking game. Jason, bizarre. Anyways, Matthew, please continue.
Okay. So again, I'm sitting a little bit in the middle of this. I think I lean a little bit more towards Kent's side, though, in that I think a lot of Craig's reasons were very much selfish from Orlando Brown's perspective. They're all about him. None of them are about the team whatsoever.
They should be.
And that's fine when it comes to asking for money and getting money. He's no longer getting more money, though. It's now transitioned from being about him to being about the team. Being at camp undoubtedly makes the team better. Yeah, I don't think that missing 1.5 to 2 weeks of camp is the difference between awful and an all-pro. But I do think missing the first, week and a half, 2 weeks of camp when they're going through the base level installs and you got to play catch up. And this is really relatively fresh in your career of playing left tackle with your second year of a new team that might be having changes. It would behoove you to be there. You're gaining nothing by not being there other than you're showing that you're willing to quit on a second team in 3 years, because he did that to the Baltimore Ravens. So I don't think it's a smart move on his part. I said first of all, I'm surprised that he's not showing up. I didn't think he was going to do that. I don't see why you wouldn't. So I'm kind of surprised that he's not. I've been very pro Orlando Brown should do what's best for him. And I said that's taking the franchise tag and asking for more money next year once you prove that you can play during the way he played during the second half of last year all year long. Said if he does that, he'll get more money. I advocated he should do that because that's the best move for him. I don't think skipping any amount of training camp is the best move for him. I just simply don't think that's how he maximizes his money going forward. I get it. He's not missing any money by not being there. There is a chance that he shows up week 1 and plays just as good with 0 practice or an entire training camp. But the odds are you go to training camp, you will probably be, the team will be, and you will be better week 1 than if you just show up to play week 1. That's my stance on it. He doesn't have to show up. I get the concept from only his perspective why he wouldn't. Why go to St. Joe and hang out there and practice when it doesn't financially impact you? But at some point in time, you got to stop thinking about Orlando Brown Jr. and start thinking about the team. So from that aspect, get to camp.
I just, the process, the process frustrates me entirely. Like, that's really where a lot of my frustration comes. It's just, I cannot stand how this whole thing has went from wire to wire. I don't agree with how it's been handled or managed, and it frustrates me.
From that perspective, I have no problem with how he's handled any of the negotiations. I would be very clear about that. I think he's making the most money that he can make this route, so by all means, have at it.
Sure, but I think you should have given yourself more than 5 weeks to negotiate a contract. I think that would have been
my argument is I don't think the Chiefs would have changed their offer. They didn't.
And I don't think he cared. I think both sides are
fine
with the franchise tag. I don't think that was a big deal to either side.
Chris Jones had an agent more than 5 weeks before is all I'm going to say. There's some differences between some of the negotiations that we've talked about here.
He didn't want to play on the franchise tag. I think Brown's okay with it though.
I understand, but I'm frustrated with the entire process. We'll see what happens. Maybe, the Chiefs can come to a long-term deal next year, or maybe they're forced to trade. Speaking of trade Coffee connects customers to the freshest and best tasting coffee they've ever made at home by partnering with the country's best craft roasters. These are independent businesses from big cities and small towns, and trade customers are truly impactful for these independent roasters, often being the largest source of new growth for them. Trade Coffee sends you freshly roasted beans from 60 of the country's best craft roasters, small businesses who pay farmers fair prices to sustainably source the greatest beans from around the world. Whether your friends call you a coffee snob or you just know when coffee tastes really perfect, Trade's real coffee experts personally taste test over 450 roasts. Right now, Trade is offering new subscribers a total of $30 off your first order plus free shipping when you go to drinktrade.com/KCSN. That's more than 40 cups of coffee for free. Get started by taking their quiz at drinktrade.com/KCSN and let Trade find you a coffee you'll love. That is drinktrade.com/KCSN for $30 off. Do you want to talk about anything else with how the offensive line reshuffles moving forward? Like, do you want to go anywhere else with Orlando Brown Jr. or do we have it all?
I think we've beaten that to death. I think
we've feeded a fed horse. Feed a fed horse.
We've fed a fed horse. I think as we see more offensive line in camp, we'll have more takes. Like I think that's when we'll want to talk about some of the shifts and stuff like that, since all of that is hypothetical right now.
We're
okay, but I need a prediction. I do need a prediction. It's not about Orlando Brown. Tooney's playing left tackle. Who is playing left guard?
Allegretti.
You think that's who they're going with?
Yeah, I think it's.
How about Andrew Wiley? Because
I think Andrew Wiley's playing right tackle to start. Yeah,
I'd move Darian Kennard to right tackle and Andrew Wiley.
Oh, I would too. I think Kennard's going to get a lot of reps on the second team offensive line. I think that first team offensive line, just to keep things rolling. Andy likes to keep camp just bam, 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 bam rolling. Get those vets in there so that they know how it's going to go.
Look, hey, everybody, appreciate y'all watching right now. Really means a lot. Camp's rolling. We're going to be live here for a little bit longer, probably another, 15, 20 minutes or what we call a Matty 5. If you like what's going on, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. It helps us grow the channel. It helps us grow these shows. We really appreciate everybody for supporting what we're doing here. So we're going to continue to talk here. But first, if you're living paycheck to paycheck or struggling to make ends meet, it can be really stressful when unexpected expenses come up. And now Dave can help get you out of a pinch when you really need it. Dave is the banking app that can help you get $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. So download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Future you will thank you. Okay, so we've talked a little.
Let's go.
Can we talk about the defense? Is this allowed?
Let's talk.
Let's do it,
Maddie. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, where do we start? Secondary. Let's go with the secondary here. Right, it's just rookies and quarterbacks, so not a lot's been able to happen, but heard a few good things, seen a few good reports come out that Joshua Williams, day 3 rookie, comes out of Fayetteville State, looked pretty good, made some plays on the ball. That's good to hear because he's a guy that if you listen to Steve Spagnuolo and the scouting staff kind of talk after the draft, it seemed like they didn't love everything they saw, but they really liked the person when they got him in for interviews. So to even have people in media that got to go and watch this first part of camp and come away saying, hey, that guy's making plays, that's good. Like, that's good to see that a guy's at least getting to flash them out there because he's got all the physical tools. He's got all the physical traits. We've talked about that a lot after the draft, but it's nice to see that that's showing up at least early on in camp here because he's a guy that I think might be in a little bit of a fight for a roster spot this year. Like, I don't think that he's going to be put on the practice squad, but I don't know if he's guaranteed a roster spot if he's not able to play on special teams or at least be a depth cornerback. So getting him out there, getting some early shine, I like to see it.
Yeah, no, it's great to see that. I mean, we love a lot of the talent that they added, even at day 3 of the guys that we were really high on that we didn't think would be around at day 3. And the Chiefs added predictably all of them. So it's exciting to hear guys like Joshua Williams looking good. Maddie's guys like Jalen Watson looking
Maddie
good.
Lane draft.
Trent McDuffie looking really good. I mean, that's to be expected, but it's also good to see that. I also thought it was a big kind of thing there. Nick Easy actually pointed it out on the Twitch stream. How about Brian Cook on the podium before George Karlaftis this week? That's a big one there. Karlaftis has certainly gotten plenty of run, but a guy that we've talked a little bit about as being a player that it seems this staff is very, very high on, like extremely high on, getting some of that early weekend press availability. That's awesome to see all of those young guys. And granted, no veterans here yet. So of course they're going to be the guys that are getting the shine right now, but performing well and earning the trust of this coaching staff already to go and do these sorts of media appearances, looking good in camp. Like, all of those things are extremely positive, because if that secondary that they poured a bunch of assets into, now granted, not necessarily like super high-end assets outside of Trent McDuffie, Justin Reed, if that secondary looks that good, if it really does look good, there's a lot of cost-controlled talent there. There's a lot of guys that they can hang their hat on for the future there, and there's a lot to really be excited about. And that's coming from an organization that just lost a cornerback to a top deal in Charvarius Ward. Regardless of what you thought about Charvarius, the NFL thought very highly of him and how he's played. So being able to replace that, if they can hit the ground running, this could be a defense is really fun to watch early in the season.
Well, and I don't want to transition too quickly because I want to sit on Josh Williams a little bit, but also like one of the storylines with this secondary has been included, or has been, kind of updated, because I don't want to say the entirety of the safety net is gone, but I think Rashad Fenton provided, some stability at that position from an experience perspective. He's played capably in this defense in the last few years. He's starting on the PUP list as well. And so now you're looking at a situation where the veteran in the room is L'Jarius Sneed, third year veteran, L'Jarius Sneed, the best cornerback on this, coming back to this football team for sure. No doubt. But the safety net's gone. And that's kind of fun and kind of exciting in some ways, because now there's just more opportunities for the Joshua Williams to get thrown to the fire. The Trent McDuffies, obviously, to get thrown to the fire. Maybe a Jalen Watson. Lonnie Johnson's even making his transition back, to corner. Like, we don't know what how that's ultimately going to shake out either. Hopefully, he's got NFL experience. Like, that's a nice quality, but like, he's been playing safety. So there's so much uncertainty with this group, and there's so much, fun talent to get eyes on. And it seems like some of them, the guys that rise to the top, are going to get thrown to the fire a little bit. And that's where, the Josh Williams buzz comes in a little bit. If you read Nate Taylor's report, I believe today, talking about how the Chiefs have been impressed with what Joshua Williams has been able to put together during the offseason process, right? That's awesome to hear, especially as a guy that has continually gotten better throughout the process. We talked a little bit about the Senior Bowl and his growth throughout the week there, right? Well, if that has continued, that continual growth, the physical measurables are there, the athleticism's there, and so I'm looking forward to seeing, if he does get thrown to the fire. I'm kind of excited. I'm excited to see all these guys get thrown to the fire. Because, I think one of the overarching discussions for this defense, if we're looking at it in its entirety, is, and Nick Bolton said it today, young and fast, but the emphasis on the young here, it's not going to be pretty all season. It's just not. And it might be ugly early. Hopefully Kyler's not in the playbook too much for week one. But, but you're going to get to see all these guys with immense talent, get thrown to the fire. And I'm curious to see, that's one of the biggest things I'm excited to see through this process, through training camp, is Steve Spagnuolo with these young guys, what he holds back, what he puts up, what he installs, and what he leaves in early on in the season, because this could be a really young group that they're throwing out there.
Let it be ugly. Let the defense be ugly at times.
I'm fine with it.
As long as Leo Chanel says, they embrace the violence. I don't care if it's ugly out there, but if you have Leo Chanel and Brian Cook, who is one big ass dude, like looking at him on the field or up on the podium, big dude for a safety.
He's huge.
Massive. You get him flying around. You get Leo Chanel, new guys coming in on top of Nick Bolton hitting people and Willie Gay and then George Karloff. Like, there's guys on this defense. Justin Reed coming in now as the veteran. A lot of guys that will hit. And so, yeah, you might have some blown coverages. Yeah, you might have guys out of position, but you can quickly cover that kind of stuff up, not in terms of like that exact play, but the overall impact of the defense. If they're aggressive, if they're violent, if they play fast. And I love the demeanor of a lot of the people they've added over the past 2 years in that regard. You no longer have, it's not that these guys aren't smart football players, but it seems like there's a little bit of a maybe sidestep away from just super smart players to, okay, these guys are smart, but there's also this physicality. There's this violence and aggression to their game. And it's almost as if the Chiefs are kind of realizing just having guys that always know the right player can get in the right spot maybe isn't always going to be enough. Maybe we can make the game a little uglier on defense. Maybe our defense can match what Creed Humphrey says this offensive line wants to be, one of the most physically dominant offensive lines, most violent offensive lines. Turn the defense into that. You want to be ugly with all the young players kind of time? That's okay. You run across the middle of the field, you might lose your head. Your helmet might pop off once or twice going into that. It'll be fun. It'll at least be fun.
Yeah. Creed Humphrey, another guy who doesn't care that Orlando Brown Jr. isn't showing up to camp. But moving back to the defense here, I want to read this direct quote from Nick Bolton, who was on the podium today. Based on what I saw in OTAs, we have a young and fast defense. That's what we're going to take pride in, being young, fast, and physical. I'm excited. Now, listen, a lot of this stuff, like you see guys pumping things up in camp, and obviously I haven't put pads on or anything like that, but like it checks out. I mean, that's the types of dudes that they added to this defense. They added athleticism, they added physicality, they added toughness. Like that's what it was. And at times last year, we saw things avalanche. We saw this defense struggle to put things together at stretches. Things would start to collapse. Guys are, not doing what they need to do, not hitting with the intensity that they need to, not bringing guys down. It's a tough sport. It's tough to play as it is. If you're not bringing the intensity, the physicality, the toughness, it's even harder. And Nick Bolton was that guy last year throughout the year that we looked at all the time. It was just like, hey man, that guy wants it. Like there's zero doubt. You can say whatever you want about the kid, but he wants it. And it seems like they've added a bunch of guys around him that can do that. So seeing that, hearing that out of a guy that is a leader of this defense in the second year of his tenure, the Mike linebacker for Steve Spagnuolo, is going to get a lot of podium time. He's going to get a lot of responsibility. For him to be excited about how young, fast, tough, physical this defense is should get lots of Chiefs fans excited, because like Maddie said, like Kent said, it might be ugly, but you know what? They're going to hit. They're going to fly around and they are going to hit. And that is worth something in my book, especially if they're going to have the traditional Spagnuolo slow start.
Yeah, it's there's a motto like fail fast, fail at 100 miles an hour, fail fast, fail physical. I think it'll be a little bit higher variance at times, but I think, it'll be fun as this team grows, as this team improves, as this team gets better. Playing fast from Jump Street will be beneficial down the road. It'll be beneficial when this team gets to, the end of the year, and they need to play at the highest level. I can't wait. I had this it's kind of like, I think my mentality, maybe I should hold this back. I don't know, but I'm just really excited. Like the mentality I have for this season is different than any season, I think, in the Patrick Mahomes era for me, like where I'm not, I don't think my expectations aren't different. I mean, they're not lower. I don't think they're just different. Like I'm willing to live with some of the mistakes of this team because of how they've approached this entire offseason. I feel more willing to live with some of the stuff that we're probably going to see, with an understanding that this could benefit the long term. This could benefit by the end of the season, because the old core failed to achieve the highest goal last year. So they went in a different route this year, and hopefully this build towards, it just feels like this season, it kind of feels like maybe not the same kind of sprint as it always has been. Maybe the same kind of urgency to get it done with that core where I feel like this year you've got runway ahead of you, and it's just kind of like the second era of the Mahomes era, where I feel more comfortable living with some of the failures that we're going to see this year. It's going to be frustrating at times, don't get me wrong, but this young core, I feel that grace may be the right word. I feel willing to have more grace week to week than I ever have. And it's actually exciting and like liberating in some ways.
It's good frustration. It's good frustration. Like you could be pissed off at a group of young guys in their rookie contract because you could see them maybe grow throughout the year and be like, well, that guy's cost controlled. Boy, we got something cooking. It's yeah.
I did a pretty good job being frustrated with Ben Neiman and Dan Sorensen too. Did a pretty good job of that, actually.
That was bad frustration. Let's be clear here. That was
they know better.
Frustration.
They know better. I mean, it just feels like there's so much, and maybe this is coming from guys that are just so geeked about the draft. There's just like this feeling of, the cost controlled side of it is so you nailed it, Craig. It's like just this excitement of like, 5 of these 10 hit in a real substantial way. You're gonna go
after last year when they had so many hits. Yeah,
you'll be beside yourself, and you'll look at this team going, okay, this is a door is wide open. A door is wide open, and the health of the cap moving forward. Everyone loaded up on aging pass rushers this year. Well, the Chiefs are going to have a lot of money to throw around here in the long term pretty soon, or more money to throw around than they have in the past to be able to kind of supplement all these big hits that they get in the draft with all this draft capital. I'm just telling you, it could be a scary little wave here. And I think that's where it's just like we're on the precipice of something that could be really cool to watch for the next 5 years.
But who's playing left tackle?
Joe Tooney this week, buddy. Joe Tooney.
had to call back to that. Maddie, is there anything else you want to talk about on the defense? Or,
I think I'm pretty good right now. We've talked about some stuff. Like, I'm interested to see who's going to be your second or third defensive end and little things like that in the rotation. But I think so far training camp, it's just been rookies. I don't know if there's a lot of takeaway from the rookies and the QB so far on the defensive side. We're going to start seeing some guys report now. So obviously I'm interested, but I don't think you're going to glean as much from that side as maybe we will the offense to start this camp, because theoretically it should be a very similar style of defense. Not a lot's going to change there. So it's just your simple position battles. And when you have so many new pieces, don't know how many just straight up position battles there's actually going to be.
Okay. Before we get out of here, I'm going to be at camp this weekend. Kent is joining me for a day. We got buddy Bearcat. Camp TikTok. Tucker Franklin's going to be out there every single day. So I need each of you to give me a player that we haven't heard enough about, that we also haven't talked a ton about. So Maddie, Juju doesn't count. We've talked a lot about Juju, but player that we haven't heard enough about that you want to hear more about coming out of this first weekend of camp. I will specifically watch for you, Matthew.
Oh, I get to go?
You get to go.
Oh, it is easy. Travis Kelce. So you should you should keep your eyes on that guy. Let me know how he's looking out there, Craig.
Of course.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. Who's the guy that we haven't talked about that I want you? Taylor Stallworth. Let's see. I want you to watch some D tackles, right? This room does interest me a little bit. So Taylor Stallworth, I think, should be your defensive tackle 3. He should play the third most snaps. Tershawn Wharton's clearly going to have a role. I'm really interested to see what Stallworth looks like. But then even after that, the 5th guy, I think that's one of the few position battles. And it's not exciting to talk about a 5th defensive tackle, but Colin Saunders versus Cortez Broughton. I really like Cortez Broughton. He played well enough in a rotational piece early in his career, I believe, for the Chargers. Then he comes over. He hasn't got to play yet. I do think that's a position, just that whole position is worth watching, specifically Stallworth, but then also who looks better, Saunders or Cortez Broughton, because I really like Broughton coming out of college.
Are we all going, Craig? Or did you just want Maddie?
You go. You go, buddy, even though you're going to be there.
No, I'm not going to camp, Kent. Thanks for asking if we're all going to camp.
Yeah.
Shorts and t-shirts practice.
We haven't talked a lot about Rojo, and I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see him out there getting work. Ronald Jones. Like, I don't know, some people kind of feel like he's like an afterthought, like he's not making the team. I think he's pretty firmly on this football team. Like, but some of the narratives around it seems like some people are kind of like he's like in a battle. And I don't think so. I think he's pretty firmly in there. But I'm excited to see how he looks because he's running the football. He's pretty good. His ball protection's been an issue for him at this point in his career. Pass protection's been an issue at this point in his career, but running the football he's impressive, and I'm excited to kind of get eyes on him a little bit. We really haven't spent a ton of time talking about him or the running backs all that much, so I'm really looking forward to watching Rojo.
I'm looking forward to safety 4, and that is a giant group of dudes here. Dion Bush, Najee Johnson, Zane Anderson, Devin Key, like all of these guys. Like Zane and Devin got a lot of hype in last year's camp. I'm looking forward to seeing after a year kind of the transition that they can make. I know that people don't necessarily have really good memories of Zane Anderson from some of his on-field last year, but again, another year under his belt. I'm really looking forward to that. Najee Johnson, another guy that's been hyped a little bit in these opening weekends here, made some plays. Is he, he's a guy that I liked when I went back and watched the tape. I came away from the tape a lot more thinking, hey, this guy's got something. And then you got Dion Bush, a veteran, a guy that has been around for a long time. They probably
special teams ace,
special
Dion Bush.
All these guys can play special teams at a high level. So like you're probably only keeping 4 safeties with the number of quality corners it appears that the Chiefs have here, and they keep typically 10 DBs. So if they are keeping only 4 safeties, that last spot is going to be an absolute battle for that position. So I'm really interested to see how those guys look when they're out there next week.
I can't wait for roster predictions because I'm going to stick to 5 safeties and 5 corners, I think. So
are you?
Yeah. Dude, I look at I've done some roster predictions for the KCSN Substack, which you can go down to the description of this show and hit the subscribe button to. $30 gets you premium content for an entire year, access to the KCSN Discord. It'll let you answer questions or ask questions for 21 questions, all kinds of great stuff. Anyways, I've been doing the 53-man roster predictions. It is so hard. It is like just I like some of the bottom roster decisions are going to be so difficult. How many DTs do you keep? How many, everything is going to be really, really difficult. And I don't think I was able to keep 5 safeties when I did it last. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We will be out there this weekend. I think, Craig, you're there Friday and Saturday. Is that right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Yeah. Craig, are you accepting hugs?
I always accepting hugs. Looks for the very tall guy with this creepy mustache wearing a giant straw sun hat. I'm going to be very easy to find this weekend.
He'll be sitting next to the worst kept secret on social media, Chief Bearcat. I'll be there Saturday. Can't wait. Really excited to get first look. It's going to be a lot of fun. And luckily, I can get there without Maddie being there. That is going to do it for the KC Laboratory. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you later.